Elena Martinez woke up at 4 in the morning, just like she had every day for the past 3 years. The old rooster outside her bedroom window was still asleep, but Elena's body clock didn't need any help anymore. She pulled on her worn jeans and boots, tied her long black hair into a ponytail, and headed outside into the cool morning air. Her small ranch stretched out before her in the dim light. 20 acres of what used to be green pasture now looked brown and cracked. The drought had been going on for 8 months, and every day felt like a test of how much more she could take. Elena grabbed the water bucket and walked toward the chicken coop, her boots crunching on the dry grass. The chickens clucked softly as she filled their water container. At least they were still laying eggs. Elena counted 12 eggs in the nesting boxes and smiled for the first time that morning. 12 eggs meant she could sell 10 at the farmer's market and keep 2 for herself. Every dollar counted these days. As she walked back toward the house, Elena's eyes fell on the pile of bills sitting on her kitchen table. The stack seemed to grow bigger every day, medical bills mostly. Her husband Miguel's cancer treatment had cost more than their little ranch could ever make. Even with insurance, the bills kept coming. Chemotherapy, radiation, hospital stays, medications that cost more than most people made in a month. Miguel had fought hard for 2 years. Elena remembered how he would still try to help with the ranch work even when he could barely stand up. He would lean against the fence posts, giving her instructions on how to fix the water pump or which fields needed attention. Even when the cancer was winning, he never stopped trying to take care of her. The day Miguel died, Elena thought the worst part was over. She was wrong. The bills didn't stop coming just because he was gone. In fact, they seemed to come faster. Final treatments, ambulance rides, funeral costs. Elena had used up all their savings, sold Miguel's truck, and even pawned her wedding ring. Nothing was enough. She sat down at the kitchen table and spread out the bills like she did every morning. The total amount made her stomach hurt. $47,000. On a good month, her ranch made maybe $1,500. Elena was good at math, and the numbers didn't lie. She was drowning. The phone rang, startling her out of her thoughts. Elena looked at the caller ID and felt her heart sink. Valley Bank. They had been calling every day for the past month. Elena let it ring until it stopped, then immediately started ringing again. She picked it up on the 4th ring. "Hello, Elena. This is Jennifer from Valley Bank. We need to talk." Elena had been dealing with Jennifer for months now. The woman's voice was always polite but firm, like a teacher explaining why you failed a test. "I know why you're calling," Elena said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I need more time." "Elena, we've given you extensions twice already. Your mortgage payment is 4 months behind. We have to start foreclosure proceedings." The word foreclosure hit Elena like a punch to the stomach. She had grown up on this ranch. Her grandfather had built the house with his own hands back in 1952. Her father had expanded it, adding the barn and the chicken coop. Miguel had proposed to her right here in the front yard, under the old oak tree. "Please," Elena said, and she hated how desperate she sounded. "I have a plan. The farmer's market has been doing better, and I'm thinking about selling some of the equipment. Just give me 2 more months." Jennifer sighed on the other end of the line. "Elena, 2 months won't solve a $47,000 problem. I'm sorry, but the bank has made its decision. You have 30 days to vacate the property." The line went dead. Elena sat staring at the phone for a long time, listening to the dial tone. 30 days. In 30 days, she would lose everything. Her family had built over 70 years. Elena spent the rest of the morning doing her usual chores, but everything felt different now. Feeding the chickens, checking the vegetable garden, fixing a loose board on the fence. All of it felt like she was just going through the motions. In 30 days, someone else would be doing these things. Or maybe no one would. Maybe the bank would just let the place rot. Around noon, a black sedan pulled up her driveway. Elena watched from the kitchen window as a tall man in an expensive suit got out of the car. He looked around the property with the kind of eyes that put a price on everything they saw. Elena had never seen him before, but she knew exactly what he was. A debt collector. Elena opened the front door before he could knock. "Whatever you're selling, I'm not buying." The man smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. "Ms. Martinez, my name is Blake Richardson. I'm not here to sell you anything. I'm here to help you." "Help me?" Elena laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Let me guess. You want to help me pay my bills by taking the few things I have left." Blake Richardson pulled out a business card and handed it to her. The card was thick and expensive looking with gold lettering. "I represent certain individuals who specialize in solving impossible financial problems." Elena looked at the card. It just said, "Richardson Solutions" with a phone number. No address, no website, nothing else. "What kind of solutions?" "The kind that can make your debt disappear completely," Blake said. "All $47,000 of it." Elena felt her heart skip a beat. "What's the catch?" Blake looked around the ranch again, his eyes stopping on the old oak tree where Miguel had proposed. "May I come in? This isn't the kind of conversation we should have on your front porch." Against her better judgment, Elena stepped aside and let him in. Blake sat down at her kitchen table, right next to the pile of bills. He picked up the top bill and looked at it like he was reading a grocery list. $47,312, he said, plus interest, late fees, and penalties. "By my calculation, you're looking at closer to $60,000 in total debt." Elena's mouth went dry. She hadn't even thought about the interest and fees. "How do you know all this?" Blake smiled again. "It's my job to know. Ms. Martinez, what if I told you that I could make all of this go away? Every bill, every debt, every collection notice. What if I could guarantee that the bank would not only stop the foreclosure, but actually pay off your entire mortgage?" "I'd say you're either lying or crazy," Elena said, but her voice shook a little. Blake reached into his jacket and pulled out a thick envelope. He set it on the table next to the bills. "There's $5,000 in that envelope. Cash. Consider it a good faith payment." Elena stared at the envelope like it might bite her. "What do you want in return?" "Your participation in a special event," Blake said. "One night, a few hours of your time. You help my clients with their business and they help you with yours." "What kind of business?" Blake stood up and walked to the window looking out at the ranch. "The kind that wealthy people enjoy. Entertainment. You would be compensated very well for your time." Elena felt a chill run down her spine. "What kind of entertainment?" Blake turned back to her, and for the first time his smile looked genuine, almost sad. "Nothing harmful, Ms. Martinez, nothing that would hurt you physically. My clients are very specific about that. They simply want to meet you under controlled circumstances." "That doesn't tell me anything." Blake sighed and sat back down. "There's an event next Friday night. A gathering of very wealthy individuals who enjoy unique experiences. You would attend this event, meet these people, and participate in their evening's entertainment. In return, all of your debts disappear forever." Elena felt like she was standing on the edge of a cliff. "And if I say no?" Blake gestured toward the bills on the table. "Then you have 29 days to find $60,000 or you lose everything your family spent 70 years building." Elena picked up the envelope. It was heavy. $5,000 was more money than she had seen in months. It was enough to buy food, pay the electric bill, maybe even make a partial payment to the bank. "I need to think about it," she said. Blake nodded and stood up. "Of course. But don't take too long. The event is next Friday and my clients don't like to wait." He walked toward the door, then turned back. "Ms. Martinez, I know this sounds strange. I know you're scared. But sometimes the only way out of an impossible situation is through an impossible door." After Blake left, Elena sat at her kitchen table staring at the envelope. She thought about Miguel, about how hard he had fought to live. She thought about her grandfather, building this house with his bare hands. She thought about 30 days and $60,000 and impossible doors. As the sun set over her dying ranch, Elena Martinez made a decision that would change her life forever. She picked up Blake's business card and dialed the number. Friday night came faster than Elena had expected. She stood in front of her bedroom mirror trying to decide what to wear to something she didn't understand. Blake had called her 3 times during the week, each conversation more mysterious than the last. Wear something simple, he had said. Nothing fancy. You won't be wearing it long anyway. That comment had made Elena's stomach turn. But Blake quickly explained that she would be given special clothes for the event. He wouldn't tell her what kind of clothes or why she needed them. Every question Elena asked was met with the same answer: you'll understand when you get there. Elena chose a plain blue dress and her most comfortable shoes. She had no idea what the night would bring, but she wanted to be ready for anything. As she brushed her hair, she thought about the $5,000 now sitting in her bank account. For the first time in months, she had been able to buy groceries without counting every penny. At exactly 7 o'clock, a black car pulled up outside her house. Not Blake's sedan, but a larger car with tinted windows. Elena grabbed her purse and walked outside, her heart beating fast. The driver was a woman about Elena's age with short blonde hair and kind eyes. "You must be Elena," the woman said as she got out of the car. "I'm Lisa. I'll be taking you to the event tonight." Lisa's voice was gentle, like a nurse talking to a scared patient. Elena felt a little better knowing that at least one person involved in this strange situation seemed normal. "Do you know what this is all about?" Elena asked as they drove through the dark countryside. Lisa glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "I've been driving people to these events for 2 years now. All I can tell you is that everyone comes back okay. Different, maybe, but okay." Different how? Some people leave with their problems solved. Others leave with new problems. But everyone leaves alive and unharmed. I promise you that. They drove for almost an hour, going deeper into the hills outside of town. Elena had lived in this area her whole life, but she didn't recognize the roads they were taking. Finally, they turned onto a long driveway that led to what looked like an old warehouse. The building was bigger than Elena had expected, with several expensive cars parked outside. She could see light coming from inside, and she could hear the sound of many voices talking at once. "This is where I leave you," Lisa said as they stopped near the entrance. "Blake will meet you inside. Remember what I said? Everyone comes back okay." Elena walked toward the building on shaky legs. The door was heavy and made of dark wood, like something from an old church. Before she could knock, it opened from the inside. Blake stood there wearing the same expensive suit she had seen him in before. Behind him, Elena could see a large room filled with people in fancy clothes. Everyone looked wealthy, like they had stepped out of a magazine about rich people's parties. "Elena, right on time," Blake said, taking her arm gently. "How are you feeling?" "Scared," Elena said honestly. Blake nodded like he had expected that answer. "That's normal. Everyone feels scared their first time. But I promise you, by the end of tonight, all your worries will be over." He led her through the crowd of well-dressed people. Elena felt very out of place in her simple blue dress. The women around her wore gowns that probably cost more than Elena made in a year. The men wore suits that looked like they had been custom-made. Everyone was drinking champagne and talking in low voices, but Elena noticed that they all kept looking toward the front of the room. There was a raised platform there, like a small stage, with bright lights shining down on it. "What's the platform for?" Elena asked. Blake didn't answer. Instead, he led her to a small room off to the side of the main area. Inside, there was a chair and a table with some clothes laid out on it. "I need you to change into these," Blake said, pointing to the clothes on the table. Elena looked at what he was showing her. There was a simple white dress, much plainer than what she was already wearing. Next to it was a pair of white shoes and what looked like a rough burlap sack. "What's the sack for?" Elena asked, though she was afraid she already knew. Blake's expression became serious. "Elena, what I'm about to tell you might sound scary, but I need you to trust me. The people out there are going to bid on you, like an auction. But it's not what you think." Elena felt the room start to spin. "Bid on me? What do you mean, bid on me?" "They're bidding on the chance to help you," Blake said quickly. "These people have more money than they know what to do with. Helping people in desperate situations is how they entertain themselves. It's like a game to them." "A game?" Elena's voice was getting higher and more panicked. Blake held up his hands, trying to calm her down. Think of it like this. You have problems that money can solve. They have money and they want to solve problems. The auction is just how they decide who gets to help you. Elena stared at the burlap sack. And that? The sack keeps your identity private until the bidding is over. That way, the person who wins is choosing to help you based on your situation, not on what you look like or who you are. Elena felt sick to her stomach. This is crazy. I can't do this. Blake sat down in the chair and looked at her seriously. Elena, do you remember what I told you about impossible doors? Sometimes the only way out of an impossible situation is through an impossible door. This is your door. Elena thought about her ranch, about the 30 days the bank had given her, about the $60,000 she owed. She thought about her grandfather building their house with his own hands, and about Miguel proposing under the old oak tree. What exactly happens during the auction? She asked. You stand on the platform. I tell them about your situation, the medical bills, the ranch, the foreclosure. People bid on the chance to help you. Whoever bids the highest gets to solve your problems. However they want. However they want. Blake nodded. Within reason. These people aren't monsters, Elena. They're just very wealthy individuals who get bored with normal charity. They like the excitement of competing to help someone. Elena picked up the white dress. It was simple but made of good material. How long does it take? Usually about 20 minutes for the whole thing. You put on the dress, I put the sack over your head. You stand on the platform while I explain your situation. People bid, someone wins, and then we remove the sack so you can meet the person who's going to help you. Elena looked toward the door, thinking about Lisa's words. Everyone comes back okay. Different, but okay. What if I don't like the person who wins? Blake shrugged. Then you walk away. But you also walk away from the solution to your problems. The choice is always yours, Elena. Right up until the very end. Elena took a deep breath and picked up the white dress. Give me a minute to change. Blake left the room and Elena slowly changed into the white dress and shoes. They fit perfectly, which made her wonder how Blake had known her size. When she was ready, she opened the door. Blake was waiting with the burlap sack in his hands. Are you ready? Elena nodded, though she didn't feel ready at all. Blake gently placed the sack over her head. It smelled like old grain and was rough against her skin. Suddenly, everything was dark, and her breathing sounded very loud in her ears. Blake took her arm and led her out of the small room. Elena could hear the crowd getting quieter as they walked toward the platform. She could feel many eyes on her even though she couldn't see anything. Ladies and gentlemen, she heard Blake's voice echoing in the large room. Tonight we have a very special case. This young woman is about to lose everything her family has built over 70 years. Elena stood as still as she could while Blake told her story to the room full of strangers. He talked about Miguel's cancer, about the medical bills, about the drought that had destroyed her crops. He made her sound like a character in a sad movie, which Elena supposed she was. The bidding will start at $10,000, Blake announced. Elena heard a man's voice call out 10,000. Then another voice, 15,000. The numbers kept getting higher. 20,000, 30,000, 40,000. Elena realized that these people were bidding more money than she had ever seen in her life, and they were doing it as casually as ordering coffee. At $50,000, the bidding slowed down. Elena could hear fewer voices participating. Her heart was beating so fast she wondered if everyone in the room could hear it. 55,000, called a woman's voice. 60,000, came a man's voice from somewhere near the back of the room. There was a long pause. Elena held her breath. $75,000, said a new voice. This one was different from the others. Deeper, quieter, but somehow more commanding. The room went completely silent. Blake waited for almost a minute, but no one bid higher. Sold for $75,000, Blake announced. Elena felt hands on her shoulders guiding her down from the platform. She could hear footsteps approaching, and she knew that whoever had bid $75,000 was coming to meet her. Are you ready to see your benefactor? Blake asked quietly. Elena nodded, though the sack made it hard to see the movement. Blake's Hands reached for the top of the burlap sack. "Here we go," he said, and pulled it off her head. The bright lights made Elena blink and squint. As her eyes adjusted, she saw a tall man with gray hair standing in front of her. He was probably in his 50s, wearing an expensive suit. Elena stared down at the man on his knees, her mind refusing to accept what her eyes were seeing. The auction house around them had gone completely silent. Even the sound of glasses clinking and quiet conversations had stopped. Everyone was watching this moment unfold, but Elena couldn't think about them right now. "Dad?" The word came out of her mouth like a whisper, like she was testing to see if it was real. James Westbrook looked up at his daughter, tears streaming down his face. He tried to stand up, but his legs were shaking too much. Instead, he stayed on his knees looking at Elena like she might disappear if he blinked. "Elena," he said, and his voice cracked when he said her name. "My little girl." Elena felt anger rising in her chest like fire. "Don't you dare call me that! Don't you dare!" The crowd around them was starting to murmur. Blake stepped forward, looking confused and worried. This clearly wasn't how these auctions usually went. "Perhaps we should move this conversation somewhere. More private," Blake suggested, but Elena wasn't listening to him. "You left," Elena said, her voice getting louder. "You walked out when I was 5 years old and never came back, and now you're here at some weird auction buying people like they're cattle." James finally managed to stand up, though he was still unsteady. "Elena, I can explain. This isn't what it looks like." "Really?" Elena laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Because it looks like you just paid $75,000 to own me for the night." The word own made James flinch like Elena had slapped him. "No, that's not. I didn't know it was you. I come to these auctions to help people. I've been doing it for years." Elena shook her head. "Help people? By buying them?" James looked around the room, suddenly aware that dozens of wealthy strangers were watching their family drama unfold. "Can we please go somewhere private to talk about this?" "I don't want to talk to you," Elena said. "I want to go home." Blake cleared his throat. "Actually, there are some legal matters we need to discuss first. Mr. Westbrook did win the auction, which means he now has certain obligations." Elena spun around to face Blake. "What kind of obligations?" "Well, he's committed to paying your debts in full. All $60,000 plus the auction price. That's a legally binding contract." Elena felt dizzy. "You mean he has to pay my debts whether he wants to or not?" Blake nodded. "That's how these auctions work. The winner commits to solving the person's financial problems completely. No backing out." James stepped closer to Elena, but not too close. "I want to pay them. I want to help you." "With what?" Elena shot back. "Guilt money? Money you earned while your wife and daughter were struggling to survive?" "Elena, please. Let me explain what happened. Let me tell you why I left." Elena stared at her father for a long moment. Part of her wanted to hear his explanation. Part of her had been waiting 30 years to hear it. But another part of her just wanted to run away from this whole nightmare. "Fine," she said finally. "But not here, not in front of all these people." James nodded quickly. "I have a car outside. We can go to my ranch. We can talk there." Elena almost laughed again. "Your ranch? Of course you have a ranch. Let me guess. It's huge and perfect and never had any problems with droughts or medical bills." James looked down at his shoes. Yes, it's large. But Elena, nothing about my life has been perfect, especially not after I left you and your mother." Blake was looking back and forth between them like he was watching a tennis match. "So, should I process the payment paperwork?" "Yes," James said immediately. "Process everything. I want all of Elena's debts cleared by Monday morning." Elena felt overwhelmed. 20 minutes ago, she had been a desperate woman about to lose her ranch. Now her father was paying off all her debts, and she didn't know how to feel about any of it. "I need some air," Elena said, and walked toward the exit without waiting for anyone to respond. Outside, the night air was cool and clean. Elena sat down on the steps of the warehouse and tried to make sense of what had just happened. Lisa, the woman who had driven her there, was sitting in her car nearby. She got out and walked over to Elena. "You okay, honey?" Lisa asked, sitting down next to her on the steps. "My father just bought me at an auction," Elena said. "How do you think I'm doing?" Lisa was quiet for a moment. That's a first, even for these events. But you know what? Maybe it's not such a bad thing. Helena looked at her. "How can you say that?" "I've been driving people to these auctions for 2 years," Lisa said. "I've seen a lot of desperate people get their lives turned around by the wealthy folks in there. But I've never seen someone get a chance to face their past like you just did. I don't want to face my past. My past is him walking out on me when I needed him most." Lisa nodded. "I get that. My father left too when I was 8. Never saw him again. But if I had the chance to ask him why, even if I hated the answer, I think I'd want to know." Elena thought about that while they sat in the darkness. Inside the warehouse, she could hear the auction continuing. Other desperate people were being bid on by other wealthy strangers, but none of them were being bought by their own fathers. After a few minutes, James came outside. He had taken off his expensive suit jacket and loosened his tie. He looked tired and older than Elena remembered from her childhood memories. "Elena, can we please talk?" he asked, staying a respectful distance away. Elena looked at Lisa, who squeezed her hand and stood up. "I'll be in the car if you need me," Lisa said and walked away. James sat down on the steps, but not too close to Elena. For a moment, they just sat there in silence like two strangers waiting for a bus. "You look like your mother," James said finally. "Don't," Elena said sharply. "Don't talk about Mom," James nodded. "Okay. But Elena, I need you to know that leaving you was the biggest mistake of my life." "Then why did you do it?" James was quiet for so long that Elena thought he wasn't going to answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "Because I was 23 years old and scared out of my mind. Your mother was pregnant with you, we had no money, and I had just been arrested for something stupid. I thought if I left, you and your mother would be better off without me dragging you down." Elena felt tears starting to burn behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "So you just disappeared?" "I moved to Texas and worked on oil rigs for 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. I sent money every month for the first 2 years. Elena spun around to face him. "That's a lie. Mom never got any money from you." James pulled out his phone and showed her something on the screen. It looked like old bank records. "I sent money orders to your mother's address every month. $300, which was almost everything I made after paying for my room and board." Elena stared at the phone screen. The records looked real. "Mom never told me about any money. Maybe she threw them away. Maybe she was too angry to cash them. I don't know." James put his phone away. "After 2 years of sending money and never hearing anything back, I figured you were both better off without me. So I stopped sending it and tried to forget I ever had a family." "Tried to forget?" Elena's voice was getting loud again. "How do you try to forget your own daughter?" James looked at her with eyes full of pain. "By working 18 hours a day, by never taking a day off, by building a business so big and complicated that I didn't have time to think about anything else." Elena gestured toward the warehouse behind them. "And this? How does buying people at auctions fit into your busy schedule?" James sighed. 3 years ago, I was diagnosed with a heart condition. The doctor told me I might not have much time left. It made me think about all the things I'd done wrong in my life. All the people I'd hurt by being selfish." Elena felt a stab of fear at the mention of heart problems, but she pushed it away. She wasn't ready to feel sorry for him yet. "So you started coming to these auctions to feel better about yourself?" "I started coming because I wanted to help people who were in the same position I put you and your mother in. People who were desperate and had nowhere else to turn." James looked directly at Elena. "I've helped 43 families over the past 3 years, paid off mortgages, medical bills, student loans. I thought if I could help enough people, maybe it would balance out some of the damage I'd done." Elena was quiet for a long time, processing what her father had told her. Part of her wanted to believe him, Part of her wanted to forgive him and try to build some kind of relationship, but another part of her was still that 5-year-old girl who waited by the window every day for a father who never came home. Even if everything you're saying is true, Elena said finally, it doesn't change the fact that you abandoned me. It doesn't change 30 years of wondering what I did wrong to make my father leave. James's face crumpled. Elena, you didn't do anything wrong. You were perfect. You are perfect. I was the one who was broken. Elena stood up from the steps. I need to go home. I need to think about all of this. James stood up too. Of course. But Elena, please, don't disappear on me now. I know I don't deserve it. But could we maybe try to talk again? Maybe you could see the ranch, meet some of the people who work there. Elena looked at her father, this stranger who shared her eyes and her stubborn chin. I don't know, she said honestly. I really don't know. Blake appeared in the doorway of the warehouse, holding a folder full of papers. 3 days passed before Elena heard from her father again. She spent those days trying to process everything that had happened at the auction house. Her phone had been buzzing constantly with calls from the bank, but these were good calls for once. They were calling to confirm that her mortgage had been paid in full and the foreclosure had been canceled. Elena walked around her ranch with a strange feeling in her chest. For the first time in years, she didn't have to worry about losing everything. The chickens seemed happier. The broken fence didn't look so urgent, and even the brown grass seemed less depressing. But underneath all that relief was something else, a confusion she couldn't shake. On Wednesday morning, a truck pulled up her driveway. Not an expensive car like Blake drove, but a regular pickup truck that looked like it had seen some hard work. Elena watched from her kitchen window as her father got out of the driver's seat. He was dressed differently than he had been at the auction. Instead of an expensive suit, he wore jeans, work boots, and a plain button-down shirt. He looked more like the ranchers Elena was used to seeing at the farmer's market. Elena opened the front door before he could knock. What do you want? James held up a paper bag. I brought lunch. Thought maybe we could eat and talk. Elena looked at the bag suspiciously. What kind of lunch? Sandwiches from Betty's diner in town. Turkey and Swiss, the way you used to like them when you were little. Elena felt a flash of anger. You don't know what I like. You haven't known for 30 years. James's face fell. You're right. I'm sorry. I remembered you always ordered turkey and Swiss when we went to restaurants. Before I left. Elena stared at her father for a long moment. She was still angry with him, still hurt, but she was also curious. And she had to admit, she was hungry. Fine, she said, stepping aside to let him in. But this doesn't mean anything. We're just eating lunch. James nodded and followed her into the kitchen. He looked around the small house with interest, taking in the old furniture and the family photos on the walls. This place looks exactly like it did when I was young, he said. Your grandfather used to let me help with the chores sometimes before I married your mother. Elena unwrapped her sandwich and took a bite. It was good, and she hated that her father had remembered her favorite correctly. You knew Grandpa? I grew up on the ranch next to this one. My family's place was smaller, not as well maintained. Your grandfather was always kind to me. Even though my father had a drinking problem and wasn't much of a neighbor, Elena had never heard this story before. Her mother had rarely talked about the time before James left and never about how her parents had met. So you and Mom were neighbors? James smiled sadly. Childhood sweethearts? We were inseparable from the time we were 12 years old. Everyone in town always said we'd get married someday. Elena tried to imagine her parents as children, playing together and making plans for the future. It was hard to picture, knowing how the story ended. What happened to your family's ranch? My father lost it when I was 17. Drank away every penny and couldn't make the payments. That's when I knew I had to do something different with my life. James took a bite of his sandwich and chewed thoughtfully. I was terrified of ending up like him. Elena began to understand, something she had never considered before. Is that why you left? Because you were afraid you'd mess up like your father did? James nodded slowly. When you were born and I held you for the first time, all I could think about was how tiny and perfect you were, and how easy it would be for me to ruin your life. Elena felt tears threatening again, but she pushed them back. So you decided to ruin it by leaving instead? I thought I was protecting you, James said quietly. I know how stupid that sounds now, but I was young and scared. I convinced myself that you and your mother would find someone better, someone who wouldn't let you down. Elena thought about her mother, who had never remarried, never even dated anyone seriously after James left. Mom never found anyone else. She spent 30 years being angry at you. James winced like Elena had hit him. I know. I hired a private investigator 5 years ago to check on you both. When I found out your mother had died, He stopped and took a shaky breath. I wanted to come to the funeral, but I didn't think I had the right. Elena's sandwich suddenly tasted like cardboard. You knew Mom died and you didn't come? I stood in the parking lot of the church for 2 hours, trying to work up the courage to go inside. But I kept thinking about how angry you must be. How my showing up would just make the worst day of your life even worse. Elena stood up from the table abruptly. You should have come. Whatever else you did wrong, you should have been there that day. James looked up at her with eyes full of regret. You're right. I should have. It's just one more thing I can't take back. Elena walked to the window and looked out at the ranch. Do you want to see the place, the rest of it, I mean? James seemed surprised by the offer. If you don't mind showing me. They spent the next hour walking around the property. Elena showed him the chicken coop, the vegetable garden, and the barn where she kept her few pieces of old farming equipment. James asked questions about how she managed everything by herself, and Elena found herself talking more freely than she had expected. Miguel helped a lot before he got sick, Elena said as they walked past the old oak tree. He proposed to me right here under this tree. James stopped walking. Tell me about him. Elena was surprised by the request. Why? Because he was important to you. Because he took care of you when I didn't. Elena sat down on the old tree stump, where she used to sit as a child. He was a good man, kind, funny, hard-working. He never made me feel like I wasn't enough. James sat down on the ground nearby, not too close. How did you meet him? At the farmer's market. He was selling vegetables from his family's farm, and I was buying supplies for this place. He always gave me the best tomatoes and refused to let me pay full price. Elena smiled at the memory. It took him 6 months to ask me out because he was convinced I was too good for him. Sounds like a smart man. Elena looked at her father sharply. Don't do that. Do what? Pretend to be happy about my life with Miguel. You don't get to approve of my choices. You weren't here to make them with me. James held up his hands. You're right, I'm sorry. I'm glad you found someone who made you happy. They sat in silence for a while, watching the chickens peck around the yard. Finally, James spoke again. Elena, I know I can't change the past. I know I can't make up for 30 years of not being here. But I'd like to try to be part of your life now if you'll let me. Elena felt that familiar confusion rising in her chest again. I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to have a father. I don't know how to be one either, James admitted. I've been practicing on other people's families for years, but I never learned how to do it with my own. Elena looked at him curiously. What do you mean practicing on other people's families? James seemed to realize he had said something he hadn't meant to. It's complicated. Everything with you is complicated, Elena said. Just tell me. James sighed. The people I employ at my ranch, a lot of them are families I've helped through the auctions. I give them jobs, houses on the property, help their kids go to college. I've been trying to learn how to be the kind of person who takes care of people instead of abandoning them. Elena stared at him. You're telling me you have a ranch full of people you bought at auctions? I prefer to think of it as people I've helped find a new start, James said defensively. Elena stood up again, pacing around the tree. This keeps getting weirder and weirder. You're like some kind of strange charity case collector. Elena, it's not like that. Then what is it like? Elena turned to face him. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been playing house with other people's families, while your real family struggled alone. James looked down at his hands. Maybe that's exactly what I've been doing. Maybe I've been trying to prove to myself that I could be a good father, just not to you. Elena felt a fresh wave of anger. That's messed up, Dad. That's really messed up. I know, James said quietly. I know it is. Elena walked back toward the house and James followed her. At the front porch, she turned around to face him. I need you to leave now, she said. I need time to think about all of this. James nodded. Of course. But Elena, before I go, I want you to know something. The auction the other night, it wasn't the first time I'd heard your name. Elena frowned. What do you mean? Blake has been tracking your situation for months. When he told me about a woman named Elena Martinez who was about to lose her family's ranch, I knew it had to be you. Martinez was your mother's maiden name. Elena felt like the ground was shifting under her feet. You knew it was me? At the auction? I suspected. I hoped. That's why I bid so much. I was trying to, I don't know, find a way back to you. Elena stared at her father, trying to process this new information. So this whole thing was planned? You set this up? No, James said quickly. I didn't set anything up. Blake finds people who need help through his own methods, but when he told me about your case, I made sure I'd be at that auction. Elena felt manipulated and angry all over, again. So even this conversation is part of some plan you have? 2 weeks passed after James's warning about dangerous people, and Elena tried to go back to her normal routine. But nothing felt normal anymore. Every time a car came down her driveway, she wondered if it was Blake or someone worse. Every phone call made her heart jump. Her ranch was safe now, but Elena had never felt less secure in her life. On a Thursday morning, while Elena was collecting eggs from the chicken coop, she heard multiple cars approaching fast. She looked up to see 3 black SUVs racing up her driveway, kicking up clouds of dust. Elena's stomach dropped. This was exactly what James had warned her about. The SUVs stopped in front of her house, and several people in dark suits got out. But as they got closer, Elena realized these weren't the kind of dangerous people James had been worried about. The woman leading the group held up a badge. Ms. Martinez, I'm Agent Rebecca Torres with the FBI. We need to talk to you about Blake Richardson and his auction operation. Elena felt relief and fear at the same time. FBI, what's this about? Agent Torres looked around the ranch property. Is there somewhere private we can talk? This is about the auction you attended 2 weeks ago. Elena led them into her house, her mind racing. The FBI agents sat around her kitchen table like they were having a friendly visit, but Elena could tell this was very serious business. Ms. Martinez, what Blake Richardson told you about helping people isn't entirely true, Agent Torres began. We've been investigating his operation for 8 months. Elena felt cold. What do you mean? The auctions aren't just about wealthy people helping desperate individuals. Some of the participants are involved in money laundering, tax evasion, and other criminal activities. They use the auctions to move large amounts of money around while making it look like charity. Elena thought about all those well-dressed people, bidding on her like she was a piece of furniture. So they weren't really trying to help me? Some were, like your father, but others were using your situation to hide their own illegal activities. Agent Torres pulled out a tablet and showed Elena photos of some of the people who had been at the auction. Do you remember seeing any of these individuals? Elena recognized several faces from that night. The woman who had bid $55,000 was in one of the photos. What did they do? The woman you're looking at runs a network that smuggles money out of the country for criminals. She was planning to claim that helping you was a charitable donation for tax purposes, while actually using the money to pay for illegal services. Elena felt sick. So when people were bidding on me, some of them were really just trying to launder money. Exactly. And when your father's unexpected family connection complicated their plans, some of these people became very unhappy. Elena remembered James's warning about consequences. Are they coming after me? Agent Torres shook her head. Not anymore. We arrested 12 people yesterday morning, including Blake Richardson. The entire operation has been shut down. Elena felt a huge weight lift off her shoulders. So I'm safe? You're safe, but we need your help with something else. Agent Torres explained that the FBI needed Elena to testify about what she had experienced at the auction. Her testimony would help them convict the people who had been using desperate families for their own criminal purposes. What about my father? Elena asked. Is he in trouble? James Westbrook has been cooperating with our investigation for the past 6 months, Agent Torres said. He came to us when he started suspecting that some of the auctions weren't legitimate. He's been helping us gather evidence. Elena stared at the agent. He was working with the FBI? He never stopped attending the auctions because we asked him to keep gathering information. When he found out you were going to be at that specific auction, he was torn between protecting our investigation and protecting you. Helena thought about her father's behavior that night, how he had seemed to know more than he was telling her. So when he bid on me, he was trying to keep me away from the criminals. That's right. He bid high enough to make sure none of the money launderers could win. He was protecting you without blowing his cover. Elena felt her understanding of everything shift again. Her father hadn't just stumbled into her life by accident. He had been trying to save her from something much worse than financial problems. Where is he now? Elena asked. At his ranch, probably worried sick about you. He's been calling our office every day since the arrests, asking if you were safe. Agent Torres and her team left after Elena agreed to testify at the trials. As soon as they were gone, Elena got in her truck and drove toward James's ranch. She had been there once as a child, but it had grown much larger since then. The ranch was impressive. Rolling green fields stretched as far as Elena could see, with beautiful horses grazing in perfect pastures. The main house was huge but not showy, like something from a magazine about country living. Elena parked near the house and walked to the front door. Before she could knock, it opened, and James stood there looking like he hadn't slept in days. Elena, what are you doing here? Are you okay? The FBI came to see me today, Elena said. They told me about your cooperation with their investigation. James stepped outside and closed the door behind him. I wanted to tell you, but I couldn't risk the investigation. Too many families were being hurt by these people. Elena looked at her father, really looked at him. For the first time since the auction, she saw him not as the man who had abandoned her, but as someone who had been trying to protect her. Why didn't you just tell me not to go to the auction? Because you needed the money, and I knew the FBI was about to shut everything down anyway. I figured if I could win the auction, your debts would be paid and you'd be safe from the criminals. I just didn't expect... James trailed off. You didn't expect it to be so complicated. James nodded. I've been trying to figure out how to be your father for 30 years. I thought maybe solving your financial problems would be a start. Elena walked over to one of the fence posts and leaned against it. The agent said you have other families living here, people you've helped. 43 families over the past 3 years, James said. Most of them work the ranch, some have started their own businesses in town. I've been trying to learn how to take care of people properly. Elena looked around at the well-maintained property, the comfortable-looking houses scattered across the land, the children playing in a yard near one of the barns. You built all of this? We built it together. Everyone who lives here contributes something. It's not charity, it's community. Elena thought about her own small ranch, how lonely it had been since Miguel died. She thought about working every day by herself, eating dinner alone, having no one to talk to except the chickens. Could I see it? The rest of the ranch? James's face lit up with hope. Of course. They spent the afternoon touring the property. Elena met families who had come from situations similar to hers, medical debt, foreclosure, job loss. But instead of just paying their bills and sending them away, James had given them new lives. She met Rosa, a single mother whose house had burned down with no insurance. Now Rosa ran the ranch's farmer's market booth and lived in a beautiful cottage with her 2 kids. She met David, a veteran who had lost his job and his apartment. Now he managed the horse breeding program and lived in a house overlooking the best pasture on the ranch. These people all seem so happy, Elena said as they walked back toward the main house. They're not just happy, they're family, James said. We take care of each other here. We celebrate birthdays and holidays together. We help each other through hard times. It's what I always wanted for you and your mother, but I was too stupid and scared to build it back then. Elena stopped walking. James, can I ask you something? Anything. Do you really have a heart condition, or was that another story to make me feel sorry for you? James pulled out his phone and showed her a medical report. Stage 2 heart failure. I have maybe 5 years if I'm lucky and take care of myself. Elena felt tears coming to her eyes. She had wasted so much time being angry, and now there might not be much time left. What happens to all of this when you're gone? She asked, gesturing toward the ranch. I've been hoping that maybe someone I trust would want to help run it. Someone who understands what it's like to need help and what it means to give it. Elena looked at her father, then at the thriving community he had built, then back at her father. Are you asking me to move here? I'm asking if you'd consider being part of this family. Not just my daughter, but a partner in what we've built. Here, Elena thought about her own ranch, small and lonely but full of memories. Then she thought about this place, full of people who had found new lives and new hope. I don't want to leave my ranch, Elena said. It's where Miguel and I were happy. James nodded. I understand. But what if we could connect the properties? Your ranch could be part of our community without you having to give up your home. Elena looked across the fields toward where her own property would be, just a few miles away. You mean like an extension of this place? Exactly. You could keep your house, your chickens, your independence, but you'd also have neighbors again, people who care about you, family. Elena felt something in her chest that she hadn't felt in years. Hope. Not just hope for financial security, but hope for belonging somewhere again.